Let me ask you a quick question, okay? What does the bubonic plague, flesh-eating insects, a mummy, and dysentery, or was once thought to be dysentery, possibly, all have in common? I'll give you a couple seconds to think that over. It has to do with the title of the video. It's all happening in this review of The Drifting Classroom. Also, if you think this the lighting here is just a bit too much, let me know. Or if it's good. I think it might be just a tad bit too much, to be honest. And before I get started with this review, make sure that you give a thumbs up to this video. That way the YouTube algorithm will know that my content is worth watching. As well as, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Especially if you enjoy awkward content. Because I give that out in spades. Like, literally, in spades. Alright, so let's talk about The Drifting Classroom, Volume 5 by Kazuo Umezu. So, this volume, wow. Just, wow. I got more, what's that book called? Lord of the Flies feel from this volume than I have from any of the past volumes. Granted, yeah, we had a bit of, political hierarchies happen and some mutinies going on, but nothing to the extent that we are seeing in the content of this volume. Like, this volume just goes to show that sometimes if you're an elected official, you kind of have to stay an elected official and not let somebody else take the helms. Now, before I get to whatever I was saying alright. What I was saying, well, I know what I was fucking saying. Don't know why I said it like that just now. The fuck? Anyways, we're gonna go through this volume from beginning to end, and I'm going to cover what I feel to be the most important aspects of said volume. So, it looks like those little flesh-eating insects that we got introduced to around the end of Volume 4, well, I thought they would have been much more of a problem, but it turns out that they were just a once-done nuisance in the span of the first chapter of this volume. And all because, I think his name was Takamoto, he ends up killing himself by stabbing himself in the face. Or rather, like, bludgeoning himself in the face. Instant fucking death. I mean, these kids kind of die a little too easily. And it's crazy, though, there's so many of them that some deaths are impactful, like the kid that was in charge of the Ministry of Defense, like his death from the previous volume, his was very impactful, and not just to the story, but to the other characters that knew him, and that's what makes a death important. If a death if a death of a character affects other characters around them, then that death has importance. But if a death does not affect characters around them, and by affect characters around them, I don't mean just like, oh, wow, that person died, but where they're like, okay, we need to really think about what we're trying to do here. And so it turns out that Takamoto, he actually was the reason why these bugs were appearing. It was due to his imagination, and I've said this before, that I really do think that the whole imagination thing is a power system within the story. That these kids, if they so wanted to, their imagination could probably bring forth treasures or nightmares. And since Takamoto was under such stress, his imagination came alive through the use of that giant insect, which then produced smaller insects. And keep in mind that this giant insect was invulnerable, or is that the word? Its shell couldn't be pierced. It couldn't be stopped. Nothing. But there are little bits and clues to show us that it's not just Takamoto that has this power per se. I think Sho also has the power, and personally, I think it's Sho that transported the entire school away, because his desire to no longer see his mother was just that fucking strong. Because you gotta remember how the story starts. The story started with Sho never wanting to see his mother ever again, but then coming to realize that he actually wants to see his mother and he actually misses her once he came to the realization he may never ever see her again. But I'm not gonna, recap that whole entire fucking part, because we already went through that shit back in my review for Volume 1. So with Takamoto's death, Sho and the others decide to bring him back to school to bury him at the school instead of leaving him to die in the middle of bumfuck Egypt. And as they're making their way towards there, we get a bit of a monologue from Sho. No, it's basically one of his, I'm going to start calling them inner journals, because that's essentially what they fucking are. And he states that the school's gate reminded him of the gate of his home, which then, without realizing he said it, he ended up saying, I'm home, which in Japanese, that means it's, tadaima. So, he says that, and then it makes a chain reaction, and him and all the other kids basically are like, hey, let's make this like our saying. Let's make it the thing that we say every single day, no matter the circumstance. And I thought that was very bittersweet, because the fact of the matter is, these kids may never get to go back to, well, for them, it'll be present-day Japan, which it isn't present-day Japan now, but present-day Japan when this story takes place. Which I don't remember the time frame where the story takes place, to be honest. And so, this just brings about a lot of emotion, and yeah. So continue forth with the story, and continue forth with, because these kids just can't get a fucking break, okay? They end up hearing about this kid named Hashimoto. That Hashimoto, which was trying to drink water, and water from the pool, which I don't understand that. They have pool water, but they're not worried about chlorine, unless, in Japan they don't use chlorine to clean their waters. I don't know if they do or don't. So I'm just going to assume that that water in the pool is just regular fucking water. And so they get this kid out of there, but it seems like he has caught a fever, and none of the kids know what the fuck to do. They're like, what do we do with him? So they decide to take him to first aid. One of the prominent female characters named Saki knows of a kid whose father is a doctor. So she grabs him, and this kid at first, kid looks at him and is like, oh shit, he has a bad liver. That's it. But turns out, apparently, this kid, Hashimoto, actually has the bubonic plague. Yeah, the Black Death. Having the spots on him and everything. And so, Sho, the little dumbass that he is, well, at first, it's kind of smart what he wants to do. At first, he wants to basically, like, anybody that has come into contact with Hashimoto to basically be quarantined along with Hashimoto. Yeah, you heard me, quarantined. Even this manga is in fucking quarantine. Like, the fuck? Anyways, he wants to separate him and anyone else that's in contact with him, which means Sho and everybody that was with Sho. However, there are a group of students that found Sho, and we don't get to know who they are until much later. But this group found Sho because found Hashimoto and ended up cleaning Hashimoto because Hashimoto ended up shitting his pants. Not even going to, what's the word? Sugarcoat that. The kid straight up shit his pants, and these kids decided to help him out. But of course, Sho and his niche group, or his little clique, whatever. I say niche group, that makes no sense. His little clique, alright, they are figuring all of this out and trying to basically do what they feel is right. Because they don't want to get the entire school infected. Because the entire school gets affected, that means a lot more kids are going to fucking die. And already, there has been, like, it was confirmed somewhere in this volume that there have been a total of, like, 50 deaths that students and teachers combined. And so, Sho decides to tell, like, one of his echelons, I believe that's what it's called, tells him, a kid named Gamo, I believe, that they need to basically put in a new power system, a temporary one. Now, I was saying much earlier in this review, okay, that sometimes it's not good to create a brand new power system, because then that power system will try to overthrow the old power system. And thus, what ends up happening is that these kids, first they end up burning Hashimoto alive. And it's only because they hear, now it's not shown directly they hear this, but you see Sho tells Gamo that if they end up being infected, which would be, they would have to pass, and then the symptoms would show after a day's passing. That if they were infected, that they would have to be burned. But that's how it was back in the medieval days. Now, if they had a medicine called streptomycin, I believe it's called, they could just be able to quell this disease. And of course, possibly Gamo blabbed on and on about that to somebody that he fucking shouldn't have. And this genius decided, fuck it, we're going to burn the first aid area that Hashimoto was being kept in. So now the school does no longer have a first aid clinic. So that's out the fucking window. And this new government is basically either killing or quarantining anybody that had anything to do with Takamatsu. I mean, Sho. The kid's full name is fucking Sho Takamatsu, okay? But yeah, anybody had anything to do with him, they're getting fucking killed. So while that's happening, Sho and the group that he's with, that was with him when he was trying to understand Hashimoto's assessment, they end up going out to the desert trying to find the ruins of the old hospital for the city. And they kind of end up finding it, but here's something that's kind of crazy, okay? One of the kids ends up finding a bottle. It looks like old medicine. The kid picks it up, it turns into sand. That makes me wonder if that power of imagination was in play at that moment. That possibly this kid wanted medicine so fucking badly that when he started digging for it, he just found these bottles lying around. When the truth is, those bottles were never there in the first place, and his imagination created their existence. But since his imagination couldn't create stability within like our mortal plane, basically, it fell back into the existence that it is, and that is the existence of belonging in the kid's mind. I think I just confused myself with that analogy, but I'm hoping I'm making some sort of sense here. What the kids end up finding though is a mummy, and that was a bit of like a cheap scare. And honestly, at first I thought like this mummy would come alive, come alive. But then I'm glad it didn't, because then now it's just been kind of fucking stupid. There are already aspects of this manga that I'm just kind of like, okay, you got to basically expend your belief to really believe that they could happen, like the whole knife in the wall incident in that random ass hotel room that we saw. I think it was like volume 2, volume 3. Like that. Kind of like extended, like, I'm calling it extended belief. That would make no fucking sense. Anyways, turns out none of the people that are with Sho, and keep in mind, they're nowhere near the fucking school at this point, okay? None of them are infected. So, basically, Sho and his cabinet, because, well, Sho was the prime minister, but then he basically opted out for that. That way the school can have a temporary prime minister, but it turns out Sho and his cabinet are not infected. And really not are any of the people that had associated with Sho that are being forced into quarantine either. However, the new temporary prime minister, who's this kid, has like a fucking scar stitch, and the way his kid's drawn, it's like, yeah, you can tell he's evil. That's the one thing that kind of annoys me about. Now, this might be the first time I've really talking about the art in the series, but I've noticed that, like, the dumb characters are drawn to look dumb, and the somewhat smart characters are drawn to look smart. Evil characters are drawn to look evil, and might be thinking, okay, yeah, that's a given anyways, Justin. Evil characters should look evil, smart characters should look smart. Yes, I do agree with that. However, sometimes you have to subvert people's expectations. Like, basically get a character that might look stupid, but they're actually incredibly fucking smart. Or get a character that looks smart, but let's say that, I'm not saying that they're going to be fucking dumb. Oh, you thought I was going to say that? No. Character that looks smart, but let's say that instead they're smart, but not in the area you think. Like, they're more kinesthetically smart, but not bookworm smart. like that, you know? So, that's a little bit of a nitpick for me. And so, uh, what happens is, that Sho and this other kid, whose name I don't really remember, these two end up going back to the school because Sho wants to, confirm that some of the other kids are okay, and also he wants to find out who is infected because, oh yeah, Sho and all of them, they do find out that there were others that ended up helping Hashimoto. And so while Sho and this other kid go back to the school, oh yeah, also Sho wants to go back to school to make sure that they can find out who is infected and hopefully help them. But I'm pretty sure I mentioned already that this new, or this rather temporary prime minister and his cabinet, they're all fucking infected. But while Sho and this kid that he's with go back to school, the rest of Sho's cabinet are still looking for medicine. And I get the feeling that if they will end up finding medicine, and they will end up healing whomever is left after this massive bloodbath. Because immediately, okay, this is where shit gets fucking crazy. This is where it gets like incredible Lord of the Flies type shit. Alright, so turns out the Prime Minister, or rather the sub-Prime Minister, that was just supposed to be filling in for Sho temporarily, is infected. And got infected by these 3 siblings. 2 boys and 1 girl. And this dude ends up killing all 3 of them. But he doesn't want anybody else to know that he's infected. So he's having everybody that he had forcefully quarantined to be burned alive. And Sho wants to help out all these people, trying to get them out of this building, but everybody that has sided with the temp prime minister is just chucking rocks into the building, chucking torches into the fucking building, as well as hurling spears. Yeah, and kids are getting killed left and fucking right. So basically all out war has just broken out, and it's complete fucking mayhem. And that's just where the volume ends. Amidst all this chaos, the volume just cuts. And I'm just like, damn, that is a genius fucking way to end a volume and to get your readers to just be like, okay, I need to get the next volume to know what happens. Because I don't know how anybody can just read this or read this volume and just be like, nah, I'm done. This is fucking stupid. I was like, yo, the fuck? And plus there's important characters that could potentially fucking die. Now, I don't think Sho will die because he's the main character. And usually authors don't necessarily like killing off their... Well, okay, not that he's the main character, but he's the fucking story's protagonist. So yeah, so I don't think he's gonna fucking die. Even if he ends up getting the plague, I still don't think he's gonna fucking die. But however, when it comes to characters like Yu or Nishi, those characters might be expendable. And they might actually fucking die. In case you don't remember, Nishi is this little, like, really young kid that goes to school to play, but he's actually not in school. The kid's like 5 years old, some bullshit. And Nishi is this girl who has crutches. Alright, so what do you guys think of The Drifting Classroom, Volume 5? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. If you'd be so kind to give this video a thumbs up, that way the YouTube algorithm will know that my content is worth watching. As well as subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and make sure you hit that notification icon, that way the bell is a ring-a-ding-dingin'. And also that way you'll know when I put out more content. Also, share this with your friends, share this with your family, share this with your lover, share this with your cat, your dog, whomever. Just get the word out there. Alright, and I'll chat with you guys later.